Deputy Mary Lou McDonald.
Taoiseach, the projected cost overrun in respect of the National Children's Hospital is at best a fiasco and at worst an example of gross incompetence on the part of government and those overseeing the project. What is most worrying is that despite the fact that this overrun is set to blow a hole in the capital budgets for years to come, that nobody seems to be willing to take responsibility for it. The Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, whose function it is to supervise government procurement and public expenditure, has gone into hiding, and its Secretary-General has refused to appear before the Oireachtas Health Committee today to account for their role in this process. On the Week in Politics at the weekend, the Chief Whip, Teachta Sean Kine, said the position of the Secretary-General was not sustainable. I believe he was right. And he offered up the view that the Comptroller and Auditor-General could review the spiralling cost of the Children's Hospital. We in Sinn Féin welcomed that suggestion, and we were hopeful that such an investigation would be forthcoming. But lo and behold, a few hours later, after that suggestion was made, it was rebuffed by a government spokesperson. It would seem Minister Kine either misspoke or he was slapped down. Which was it, Taoiseach? Because there are serious issues here to be examined. The original tender from BAM was €131 million lower than the next bidder. Did anybody in government raise questions as to how the accepted tender could be delivered, when others were indicating clearly that it would cost over €100 million more to actually deliver? Surely you will agree with me, Taoiseach, when I suggest that someone or a group of people has seriously messed up here. And can I ask if you will now act without hesitation and agree to a full public investigation into what has happened and ultimately who is responsible? Because this is serious stuff. You've committed to capital spending of €3 billion over the next 4 years. An overrun of more than €450 million is going to reduce that amount by up to 15% and is going to stop projects provided for in the coming years from going ahead. That's a reality. There's now massive concern in communities across the state as to how the overspend will impact on them and on commitments made to fund projects that are badly needed. So, for example, what about the commitment made for a new MRI scanner at the Midlands Regional Hospital in Mullingar? What about the second cath lab at University Hospital Waterford? What about Drimna Primary Care Centre? And I could go on, Taoiseach. So can you give us an answer as to what projects will be cut because of the scandalous cost overrun, because people want an answer to that question. And if you can clarify whether or not you agree with Deputy Kine that the Secretary-General's position from the Department of Public Expenditure is not sustainable and that he should make himself available to answer questions.
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
Thanks very much, Deputy. First of all, it's not €3 billion. No projects will be stopped and no projects will be cut, but some projects may have to be deferred. It requires a reprofiling of about €100 million worth of capital expenditure this year out of a total capital budget of €7,000 million. So it requires a reprofiling of the budget of somewhere between 1% and 2%. Half of that coming from the Department of Health, the other half coming from other departments. Where there are overruns in expenditure, there are consequences, but it is not true to say that any projects will be stopped or cut or cancelled. Some may well be deferred. I think when we talk about the Children's Hospital, I really think we need to understand the value of this project as well as the cost. This is going to be a state-of-the-art children's hospital, a revolution in healthcare for our children. A hospital attached to a major adult hospital, a maternity hospital, attached to an academic centre with 450 single beds with rooms for parents to stay beside their sick kids at night, with 15 theatres, 5 MRI machines, parent accommodation, outpatient and urgent care centres in Blanchardstown and in Tallaght, allowing a whole new model of paediatric care to happen in this country, the kind of which we've never seen, and a hospital that will be born digital with an electronic health record. That is the value of it. And like many of these big, expensive, important projects, whether it's the Port Tunnel or Terminal 2 at the airport or Lewis, when it's built, everyone will be glad that it was built and will want to be associated with it and not the criticisms thereof it. An investigation will be carried out into the reasons for the overruns, and PwC, the major accounting and consultancy firm, has been retained by the Department of Health to carry out that investigation. I'm always afraid to put a timeline on investigations or inquiries, as they always seem to take longer than we expect. But as soon as it is done, that report will be furnished to government and published thereafter. And if people wish to make further inquiries on foot of that, having all the facts, I think that would be very welcome. In terms of Mr. Watt, Robert Watt is the Secretary-General of the Department of Public Expenditure. He regularly accounts to committees, the Finance Committee and the Public Accounts Committee, and he will do that on any aspect of expenditure. However, the accounting officer for the Department of Health and for this project is Jim Breslin, and Jim Breslin will make himself available to account for any health expenditure to the Health Committee, and I understand a date has been set for that.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Mary Lou McDonald.
I don't think you need to convince anybody as to the necessity of a world-class children's hospital. God knows people have waited long enough for it, Taoiseach. That's not the source of my questions. I'm questioning the efficacy, the effectiveness of the procurement procedures of the state. And bear in mind, in your last term in government, you made something of a virtue of the fact that you had overhauled the procurement procedure to avoid precisely this type of scenario, precisely this type of cost inflation and potential wastage in expenditure by the state. So it's for that reason that Mr. Watt needs to present himself to the Health Committee, I believe. I'm well aware that Mr. Breslin is the accounting officer for the Department of Health, but I'm with Deputy Kine, with your Chief Whip. I don't believe that Mr. Watt's position is sustainable, and I see no good reason as to why he would not present himself to the Health Committee. A review by the PwC is all very well and good, but they're not in government. They're not running government departments, and where we need accountability for this cock-up is from people in government and from the senior civil servants who advise and who guide government decisions and who implement them. Taoiseach, can I finally say to you that I think you're dancing on the head of a pin by saying that matters are simply being deferred in respect of other spends. I can tell you that people in Waterford waiting for the second cath lab will not welcome or will not feel in any way reassured by your distinction between a cut and a deferral, nor will people in the Midlands, nor will people in Drimnagh. Will you confirm for the House, Taoiseach, that you will make available a full and comprehensive list of these deferred, reprofiled projects so that people can make a decision for themselves?
Taoiseach.
We'll make that available when we have it, Deputy, but as you'll know, in the procurement process and building any project, there are a number of steps in the way. A project has to have planning permission, then it has to go to tender, and then it has to be built. And we may find that other projects may be delayed for reasons beyond our control. Sometimes a project doesn't get planning permission, for example, and that in itself creates a saving. So when we have that list, we'll provide it to people, but I can assure you that none of those projects have been cancelled, and none of them have been stopped. The inquiry being carried out by PwC will be available, and you're right, they're not in government. They're also not in opposition, which means they will be objective and not political in coming to the facts on this issue. And when we do come to the facts on this issue, that report will be furnished to government and then will be published so that people can take it from there.
Thank you, Taoiseach.